Hi there, you're watching the Gardens and Graveyards channel. My name is Charisma and today we are in the garden, and you may see me wearing this shirt in a few videos coming out because we just did 2 little projects up on the medicine garden, but this is the bigger project of the day. And what we're going to start doing is reclaiming the space around the creek that travels the perimeter of our property. So in the glaring sun, the creek runs from the street is up there and in the front of our house, and then it runs like this back around this way, and it continues back past our house. So it hugs the whole perimeter of like 2 sides of our house and our property. So in the late summer and early fall, that's when we're getting into the hottest days here on the Oregon coast. So we tried to find places of shade to hang out in and garden, and this is the perfect time of year to work on the creek. And the first thing that we're going to do is remove blackberry. That is the biggest, most aggressive, invasive species in the creek area. We also have a little bit of bindweed. We also have English ivy. I'm not as worried about those right now as I am the blackberry. The creek itself right now is in sunshine, but there are some areas that we can find shade and just start working on the restoration of this creek area. We have wanted to do that since day one, but the rest of the garden has kind of taken priority, and we're finally at that point where we can start spending a little extra time in the creek area and restoring it and reclaiming it and creating a really beautiful space around this waterway that is part of our lives. So I'm going to turn the camera around and I'll show you kind of what we're dealing with. It's kind of hard to see because really it's just an overgrown mess. So for perspective, we are here in the mermaid garden where we just built that gazebo. We have a bed here and a bed here, and then we have this pallet fence that is basically there to block the view of our debris piles. And there's one over here, a little debris pile. And then we have a little walkway. So we're gonna go through here, and this is what we're dealing with. So most of this is the debris pile that we can turn and consolidate and get it up towards the fence a little bit more because a lot of it has broken down. But we have so many dead branches all in there. It's mostly shaded out Gaultheria. And then new Gaultheria all through here. We have a huckleberry there. That's fine. We have blackberry coming up through the huckleberry we want to remove. And this is a thundercloud plum that we planted in hopes to replace the roots of that stag. So you see a really large stag. I mean, it's not huge, but it's much bigger than, our plum. So this is the plum here, and then this is the dead tree. We don't want to remove that because the roots are established and holding this bank. So we're hoping that this root system will establish and hold the bank. We've also planted sweet woodruff all around in here in hopes that it'll climb down the bank and hold the bank a little bit more. It is very steep going down into the creek. So you see right here, we've got a big branch of blackberry crossing the path here. We've got a huge patch of blackberry here, all through here. There's ferns and blackberries. That's mostly what you're seeing. There is a willow right here that we planted this winter. There's skunk cabbage. The really big leaves that you see down there is skunk cabbage, which is a native, and it's fine. But, we want to get all the invasives out of here. Also, we have a birch tree right here that I'm going to take out because right above here, there's power lines. So when we moved in here, there were saplings all along the side of the bank, and then PUD came through and cut them down because they were getting into the power lines. So instead of dealing with that every 10 years or so, I'm not going to allow those trees to establish themselves and get big, but I do want to reclaim that side of the creek. So the creek is basically the division line of our property, but we can do native planting up here and kind of adopt that side of the creek and make sure that there's no invasives, make sure it's all native, and it just continues all the way over there. Mostly Gulf area in that area, but down inside the creek there's lots of blackberries. There's a big patch right here we're going to remove, and you could see it crossing our little path that we have here. So yeah, that's basically the beginning, is getting all the dead wood and the blackberries out of here. And eventually we would love to have a walking path on the interior of our garden is over there, right? But we would love to have like a really natural, like woodland type path cutting through the creek area on this side. But that's the long-term plan. Of course, that's the long-term plan. The first thing that we have to do is get all the invasives out of the area and clear space and see what we're left with and see where we have room to plant more natives. We have some natives holding. I have 2 vine maples. I have a pine. Is it a pine? Pine or a fir? I don't know. An evergreen. I have a few other small natives that we can plant, but they're really little, so we definitely need to have clear space before we plant those out. So this is going to be an ongoing project for a good long time, several weeks over the years, and we're just going to bring you along on the journey. This is the very beginning, and I'm excited to get into it. Spencer's a little apprehensive of jumping into all the hard work and, the wrestle with blackberries. It's not the funnest thing in the world, but the end result is so worth it because it's going to look so beautiful. So let's get started. All right, so we're going to start with sort of consolidating this weed and debris pile so that we have an area for all the blackberries to hang out until we decide what to do with those. All right, so we worked in the shadier part of the garden for a little while, and now that the sun has gone behind some clouds, I'm gonna get down by the creek and cut back a bunch of blackberries. We'll see how far we get. I've got about an hour to 45 minutes of time that I can dedicate to this right now. So we're just gonna get as far as we can and see where we go. So now that the sun is behind clouds, you can see down here maybe a little bit better, but I have all of this blackberry that I want to remove. I'm going to work on this side of the creek. You can see the broadleaf plants right there. That's skunk cabbage right there. And those are on each side of the creek. So the creek kind of goes like this. And I'm hoping that by the end of this hour, there's also a ton of blackberry that direction as well. I'm hoping by the end of this hour, you could clearly see where the creek is, and then we can do more later. I do have pruners. I have rose gloves that are goat skin and protected up the arm, as well as long-handled loppers. And that's basically all that I'm going to use for this project today. I'm also wearing jeans and I have my hair back because I have cut my hair in blackberry so many times. And if I'm wearing like a tall, messy bun or even a ponytail, it'll still get caught. So it's in a braid close to my body. And I've got long sleeves on. And I'm just trying to be as protected as I can while I'm working with these big, huge thorns. Well, that took more like an hour and a half, but I got everything, or all the blackberries out that I wanted to get out for today. I will turn the camera around and show you how far we got in an hour and a half. So this is the area that we cleared. We moved our debris pile over this way, cleared a little patch here to stick the blackberries that I just cut back today. Decent sized pile, not huge, but big impact. So if you remember a moment ago, all of this basically looked like that back there, just a mess, and now it's clean. I know it's just a lot of green. It's hard to kind of tell the difference, but I did clear my little path here, and get down here and show you. I basically stopped at this fallen branch, and then you can see just how like congested and messy all of this looks in comparison to this side where I just have the skunk cabbage, which, you know, I could have taken the time to cut back because it's done, but it will naturally decompose and take care of itself. This area is all natural, and I want to keep it that way as much as possible and keep the natives in here. It's just there's so many invasive blackberries. All of this is Gualtheria. This is all Gualtheria. Those are natives to our region. I planted a red twig dogwood right here that will have a better chance without all that blackberry on it. I was really pleased to see the sweet woodruff in here. If it's coming up on camera or not. So the tiny little ground cover that you can see right there, that has spread, which I'm really happy about. Because the goal is, that is what's gonna hold in my bank. I planted just a few 4-inch containers in this area. All of this is sweet woodruff. So I'm hoping that eventually it will make its way all the way down the bank. But I got all the blackberry out of here. This is a willow that I planted last year, and it's gotten quite tall, but again, it was crowded. And my goal was just to make it to that big tree and get all the blackberry from there all the way on this side of the bank anyway to that fallen branch over there. And I think I did a really good job. I'm really pleased with it. Looks clean. I can clearly see what else is going on here. This bank is very, very steep, and every time I walk up and down it, I can feel it sloughing away. So I'm glad to get this part done. And next I want to make a trail over on this side. So we were here. This is the thundercloud plum at the top of the bank. We went down that way to the willow. I want to make a trail going through here so I can clear out this section without continuing to put pressure on these banks over here. And of course, you know, we have another side of the branch that way to work on as well, and then on the other side of the creek in general. Hard to see the creek still because the skunk cabbage is so thick, but it is there. I'll just go back down here. You can see a little bit of water here. It is barely moving, but if I can get in here and clean more of it out, it'll flow a little bit better and prevent any mosquitoes and that kind of thing. I try not to mess with too much of the rotting debris, because we do have salamanders and frogs, and those are kind of the places that they want to make their homes. So whenever possible, I don't disturb that. Right now, all I'm doing is suppressing the blackberry by cutting them at the base of their stem. If I can keep on top of it and continue doing it, I can eradicate the blackberry that way, instead of having to, well, I'm definitely never going to use chemicals right there on the creek. That's not going to happen. And even systemic, the roots are going in the creek. And then also, I don't want to dig them because of all the erosion that's already happening in that creek, or on the banks of the creek. I don't want to further damage the sides of the creek by digging in it. So my best bet is just to cut them, and we pile it all together. We just wrap it all together and pile it by itself, and we don't put it in the actual compost. The stems just get really hard, and the thorns get really hard, and they're even more painful than they are when they're living. But once they are hard, you can kind of like stomp on them and cut them up and make them small, kind of like a mulch-ish. We don't use them as mulch, but it does break down pretty small pretty quickly. Oh, and the other thing that I wanted to mention, for those of you who may not be in an environment where blackberries are prolific and invasive, and you might be wondering, why in the world are you getting rid of all those beautiful blackberries? I did cut down hundreds of actual berries that were forming. Well, that's because the Himalayan blackberry is not native. I did have a couple strings of the Oregon vining blackberry that I cut, but just not worth having to deal with the different varieties in that particular area. I do love a blackberry, and it does kill me to cut down those blackberries. But I hope eventually I'll get a thornless garden variety, super tasty blackberry to just have in my garden. It's just really important to me that that creek, it becomes clear and clean and, you know, critter friendly, so that we can support our all of our native critters, right? Our salamanders, our frogs, our, you know, whatever else might be in there. Yeah, so part 1 of 5 million in restoring the creek, but it feels good to get this project started. Really good. So I hope that you're celebrating your life today, and we will see you in the next video. Bye.